Yes, yes, it is. And one may add that you yourself were involved with Fermat's last theorem, for it's a little-known fact that you discovered a set theoretic equivalent of Fermat's last theorem, which has now apparently been verified.
Good. Yes, sure enough.
Tell us where that was, so that viewers may find it.
Yes, I'd hit upon this way back about 1932 or 3, and a proof, and it was a clumsy, boring proof using the binomial theorem and various things, so it just lay there for 50 years? Yes, 50 years, maybe a little more. And then I was putting together that book, Quiddities. So I got back into that 1932 notebook and to see what was that again that I had found, because it was surprisingly little equivalent to Fermat's last theorem in entirely different terms, in terms of sorting some objects, a few objects, into a bin of boxes of various colors. And if there are equally many ways of doing it one way, which is easily described, but I won't bother, as another, then and only then Fermat's last theorem is true. So that was just a nice kind of observation, I thought, for a book like Quiddities. And then I went at it and found a ridiculously simple proof. And it's just maybe a 10-line paragraph of prose for the lay reader.
Now, Tarski's always, for you, has played a very big role in your intellectual life and so forth. When did you first learn about him?
I expect not until getting to Vienna. That's
and then you went and studied with him in Warsaw after you studied with Quine in Prague.
Yes. Łukasiewicz was my entering wedge. And I'd heard of Łukasiewicz. It happened. C.I. Lewis had mentioned him in his. I guess it would have been in his course on theory of knowledge, but he had that interest in logic of a certain sort, as we know, and there was something relevant in Łukasiewicz. But it wasn't because of that I thought I should go. When I was in Vienna, I found after that, in the course of that first term, that I wasn't getting logic at all. Of course, there was a great logician there, one that I knew of, and perhaps the only one there, namely Gödel. But he wasn't. It wasn't as though he were giving a course, wasn't teaching, and furthermore, he wasn't particularly outgoing, although he was friendly. I wanted to sit in on a course, and I wrote to Göttingen, and I wrote to Warsaw. Had a reply from Göttingen that there was nothing being taught that semester in logic, and I wrote to Carnap in Prague, and I had cordial replies, invitations from both Carnap and, in the case of Warsaw, Łukasiewicz, and so I did both of those.
Now I want to ask you not a biographical question, but still about Tarski. You know very well that there are people who are in ways very close to you, such as Davidson and Putnam, and whom you've influenced very much, who have been, certainly in recent years, critical, Putnam more than Davidson, but even Davidson somewhat, of Tarski's so-called truth definition as being adequate or sufficient and so forth. How do you view this truth definition? What do you see its point, its purpose?
Good. Yes, I
get out on the table, because here's where you do differ with Davidson and with Hillary.
Well, I see it in terms of the whole series of concepts of denotation. A one-place predicate denotes each of the things it's true of. A two-place predicate denotes the pairs of things that it's true of. It's a sort of predicate that expresses a relation. And then you have 3 and 4 and so on. Each of these can be, each of these submits to that schema, or in fact a paradigm. Boston quotes. This is the name of the name. Boston quotes designates Boston. And then take a general term like rabbit. Rabbit quotes denotes each rabbit, and similarly for the other predicates. And then here's an explanation of each of those denotation relations. And then as a zero case of that series of 1, 2, 3, etc., is truth. Truth, you might say, bringing back C.S. Peirce's term medad for a series of a sequence of no objects. A sentence is true if it denotes the medad. There's only one. At most, I qualify this from my own point of view. The definition of truth comes in this way, that if you have any particular language, you can, by in a definition of finite length, define denotation of the first degree, second degree, and so on, that is monadic, dyadic, triadic, by enumeration of the cases, because you only have a finite number of primitive predicates in your vocabulary. You can't learn an infinite number of them as primitive. You have to define some in terms of others. So you can do that. But in the case of truth, you can't define it that way. But you have an infinite number. Here you have the schema corresponding to all those other schemata, which brought in objects and sequences of objects. All you can say for truth is, quote, snow is white, unquote, is true if and only if snow is white. But we have infinitely many sentences, and therefore we can't exhaust the cases we can for the finite or positive cases of denotation. So Tarski's trick then is to get an actual definition of truth for any particular language from a general definition of positive denotation, because all the cases of positive denotation can be systematically defined, and just exhausting the finite lexicon for that language of irreducible predicates of monadic or dyadic, or etc. And so by that trick, he gets a finite definition of, explicit definition of truth, despite the infinity of the objects.
Infinity of the sentences.
Of the sentences, right.